The Fox News decision desk can now officially project that Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
The former president's comeback will be complete with a win in Wisconsin, a state that he narrowly lost 4 years ago. He is now the second president in U.S. history to win non-consecutive terms. The first was Grover Cleveland in the late 1800s. Senator J.D. Vance will become the 50th vice president of the United States. Voters express deep frustration with the Biden administration, and former President Trump and the future President Trump overperformed in urban areas, particularly with men, proving that the strategy that they doubled and tripled down on over the course of the last few months absolutely succeeded and brought him back to the White House.
47th president of the United States. Former President Trump now defeats Vice President Kamala Harris, who entered this race just over 100 days ago. And for Democrats, they were projecting the possibility of running the table with battleground states. David Plouffe with the Democratic campaign of Harris campaign suggested that just yesterday. Now it is possible that Donald Trump runs the table with these states and builds on a big landslide electoral win. We don't know where the popular vote is going to finish out, but we do know that he will be going back to the White House.
Welcome back. The Fox News decision desk projecting Donald Trump has defeated Vice President Kamala Harris and will become the 47th president. Trump winning the key battleground states of North Carolina, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. He also could win the popular vote, something a Republican has not done in 20 years. Here's what President Trump had to say in his victory speech earlier this morning.
This was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. It's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to fix everything about our country, and we made history for a reason tonight.
Kamala Harris has not spoken yet. Instead, she plans to address voters today. We are told she has yet to concede. Joining me now is pollster and WPA Intelligence founder Chris Wilson and Democrat consultant and former House Judiciary Committee Chief Counsel Julian Epstein. Gentlemen, great to see you both. Thank you so much for being here. Chris, talk to us about the results, how they compared to the polling. What are your observations?
Well, I think it's a pivotal moment, not just because Donald Trump reclaimed the White House, but also because, as you said, he's going to win the popular vote, something Republicans haven't done in 2 decades. And I think it's a clear signal that there is a new coalition of working class Americans that are made up of all races that are responding to Donald Trump's message of strong leadership, economic growth, and America First policies. There's been a lot of coverage so far of exit polling, but one thing I haven't seen covered yet is parents. Donald Trump won parents 50-47, and there was no gender gap amongst parents. He won moms 49-48, he won dads 52-48. And we can spend a lot of time dissecting where that went through and what states he may have won. But I think that's an important aspect, is you look at the working class coalition and the parents that came together to put Donald Trump back in the White House. And that's really what made the difference for him last night. Yeah, and that is what Mark Penn has been saying as well. We're going to talk with Mark Penn coming up in the show to get more on that. I think you're spot on there. Fox News senior White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich spoke with Lindy Lee, who serves on the DNC National Finance Committee and is a Harris surrogate, earlier this morning as the results were still coming in. She said Democrats were already playing the blame game. Watch this.
My phone is blowing up with recriminations and people just freaking out. This is not the outcome that we expected at all. We weren't expecting a blowout at all. We were hoping that we could hold on to those critical blue wall states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, certainly, but all of that is slipping away. The blame game has started. One of the things that are top of mind is the choice of Tim Walz as the vice presidential candidate. A lot of people are saying tonight that it should have been Josh Shapiro. Frankly, people have been saying that for months. I hate to say this, but I'm not sure how much Tim Walz contributed to the ticket.
Julian, your reaction. It's projected that Democrats lost the presidency, the Senate flipped, and it looks like the GOP could keep control of the House. This is looking more and more like a sweep. Your reaction?
Well, good morning, Maria, and thanks for having me on. Yes, I think we're in landslide territory right now. And, you know, you and I have been talking about this for a long time now. I've been on record about this for the last 2 years. The Democrats needed to do 2 things to win this election. One is they needed a strong, competent candidate that could make the case and answer questions, including in unscripted environments, the way, say, a Bill Clinton could or a Barack Obama could. Kamala Harris was not that person. Joe Biden was not that person. The Democratic leadership knew about that, and they tried to paper that over, and today they pay the price for that. The second thing the Democrats needed to do, as you and I have discussed many times, is they needed a sister soldier moment, not just on one issue, but just on about everything. The Democratic record and the Democratic policies are deeply unpopular, not just on 25% governments of the economy being government spending now, but immigration, crime, extremism on the Green New Deal, go on down the line. And, I agree with your guest here. I think what we are seeing now is a massive realignment, not just a political realignment, but a cultural realignment, because I think voters are rejecting not just the Democratic Party and their policies and their lawfare tactics, but this is also, a big signal to the news media that was, in my opinion, I say this as a Democrat, incredibly biased. They became activists rather than journalists during this campaign. It is a signal to Wall Street and Silicon Valley, who was behind the Democrats, and it's a signal to Hollywood. It's a real signal that the working class of this country is saying to the professional elites, it's time to get out. We don't like this sort of condescending, virtue signaling, luxury beliefs that you guys impose on the rest of the country, and you never have to pay price for it. Immigration being the perfect example. So I think the Democrats really played this thing wrong for the exact reasons that you and I have been discussing now for about a year and a half.
Well, I mean, as well as just destructive policies. Destructive on the American people. I mean, when you consider the failure of the wide open border, having national security impact, personal security impact, economic impact, Julian, do you think that they understand how destructive that was to have such weak vetting at the open border?
I think it was very destructive in terms of our national security, and it was also because of the economy. You know, there's so much data out there that shows that immigration is wage theft. And when I talk about luxury beliefs, you know, immigration is very good for the elites because they can build cheaper houses and have people clean those houses. But it robs middle-class people not just of jobs, but of wages, because it pushes wages down. This is the kind of thing that I think a lot of middle-class voters really object to. Yeah. So, you know, one of the big differences between the Democrats and the Republicans is the Democrats really believed that they could buy votes by expanding the welfare state. You know, new entitlements on housing, new entitlements, you know, forgive student loans, new entitlements for small businesses. Just keep piling on the public debt. And working class voters don't like that. They find that very patronizing. What they want to see is expanding the economy and protecting jobs. And whether you agree with tariffs or not, working class voters really believed that Donald Trump was trying to protect jobs rather than to give government handouts. And that resonated in a way that's much, much more significant than I think Democrats recognize. And it pains me to say this as a Democrat, but it's true. Yeah,
and Chris, I think people came out and basically said, I want the opportunities. I'm not interested in a handout of up to $20,000 if I'm a black male. I'd rather have an opportunity to make money and climb that ladder myself. Your reaction?
Yeah, it's I got to say, it doesn't happen to me very often. I agree with everything that Julian, as a Democrat consultant, had to say. It's remarkable how condescending the Democratic campaign was to working class voters and offering handouts in exchange for votes. And what's really remarkable about that, Maria, from a political strategy standpoint, is in the end, it looks like Trump will win first-time voters pretty strongly. And I give a lot of credit to the campaign for that. They turned them out. But it's not just white first-time voters, it's African-American first-time voters and Hispanic first-time voters. And they're going to win counties in South Texas that have never been won before. Yeah. By a Republican.
Really incredible. A great conversation, gentlemen. We so appreciate your time. Chris Wilson, Julian Epstein, thank you so much, gentlemen. We'll take a short break and come right back. Stay with us.
Breaking right now, 2 days after what many agree is the most consequential election in a generation, the FOMC will make a decision on interest rates. It's less than a minute away. More importantly, Jay Powell will have to navigate questions about the timing and size of that last rate cut, because this is what's happened. The 10-year yield has gone through the moon. It was supposed to go down. Instead, it's going up. The economic surprises, they won't stop going up. They also were supposed to go down, right? Wall Street thought maybe things are going to get a lot worse. Instead, there's been a string of positive surprises, one after another. Does Jay Powell have a handle on this economy? And then also we have this. Core CPI, inflation, it's drifting lower, but still, it's nowhere near where they said it would be. Have they assumed that maybe the wrong thing? So here's the thing, folks. Buckle up, because I can tell you right now, there's a ton of confusion out there. Let's go down to Washington, D.C. Edward Lawrence, he's got the call for you right now.
Now, the Federal Reserve has cut interest rates 0.25% to 25 basis points. The federal funds rate now between 4.5 and 4.75, and that should bring down mortgages slightly and auto loans be a little bit cheaper. The Fed statement says the economy expanded at a solid pace, and then added, since earlier this year, labor conditions have generally eased. Now, they also note that the unemployment rate has moved up a little bit, but still remains low. The Fed says inflation made progress towards its 2% target, but remains somewhat elevated. Now, on the risk to the economy, the Federal Reserve members say the risk to achievement in their employment and inflation goals are roughly in balance. It is not, or in a nod to a lower inflation rate. The Federal Reserve dropped the language that inflation has substantially moved towards the 2% target. So overall, 2%, the PCE inflation is around that 2% already. Now, the Federal Reserve continue to reduce the balance sheet at a preset course. The Fed says that the economic outlook is uncertain, and it will assess, obviously, on data that they're getting, market conditions, and inflation expectations on any further rate movements in this. But again, 1/4 point here for the Federal Reserve. We will listen at the 2:30 Eastern Time for Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell and his tone as to how the rate cuts will continue after this. Back to you, Charles.
Great point, because I think he may be defensive. We'll find out. Thanks so much, Edward. In 1814, Russian poet and fabulist Ivan Krylov, he penned a one-page fable, right? He wrote fables. It was entitled The Inquisitive Man, about a man who goes inside a museum and he notices all the animals except the elephant. Hence the phrase, the elephant in the room. And, well, that's what will be looming very, very large today in this Federal Reserve meeting. When Jay Powell starts to take those questions in about 30 minutes, considering the margin of victory for President-elect Trump, in fact, it's more like King Kong in the room, right? And he's casting a dark and foreboding shadow. Trump obviously has been no fan of the Federal Reserve and its immense powers. He also believes that the executive branch should have a seat at the table. The good thing is, he says, listen, he doesn't care about firing Jay Powell, but he wants to be a part of the process somehow. Meanwhile, Powell's dilemma, it began long before Tuesday's election, right? Some actually believe it began when they began hiking rates, right? Remember, they began hiking rates right here, and all of a sudden, where'd the GDP go? The GDP has gone up. We thought it would go down. Oh, and consumer spending, same sort of thing, right? Same thing. They start hiking rates, and consumer spending got stronger, and it really has stayed relatively strong. So people are wondering, maybe, just maybe, the Fed has misjudged variable lags, or maybe they just simply have lost control.
That's where we're going next with Kevin O'Leary, O'Leary Ventures Chairman, and Anthony Pompliano, Professional Capital Management Founder and CEO. Great to have both of you here on set today on such a big day. Kevin, I want to start with you. I sort of walked through the classic Trump trade 2.0. As an investor, how do you think about days like today and a future president?
Most of the moves you're seeing, including in Bitcoin, is around lifting of the regulatory weight that's been put on in the previous administration. About $1 trillion we pulled out of this. And so this will be very good for every sector, including energy. We just detailed that. But crypto specifically, it started to happen just before 1 o'clock in the morning. It trades 24/7. It's an index for a regulated environment for financial services in the U.S., which will bring in a huge amount of institutional capital here. Pomp and I have been involved in this sector for years and years. And, you know, before he even gets into it, I was against Bitcoin years ago, and the first, debate I ever had was with him on it. I've reversed my position, obviously, and for a good reason. But what this means, and let me give you some of the rumor mill going on this morning. The CFTC is going to take a bigger role in regulating all tokenization and digital payment systems. They're looking for a new master of disaster there, if you want to call it that, someone to take on the role of that. It won't be so much SEC focused. And so we're very excited about that in the crypto industry. But for me, it's digital payment systems. What a great place to invest. So I have put money to work in Circle, USDC, and other infrastructure investments. It's fantastic.
It's interesting because I was watching Bitcoin last night. I was watching the betting markets as well. When Trump got to 90%, it was just
everybody's up in the middle of the night checking
No,
Bitcoin
this was just before 11 o'clock.
2 a.m.
Anthony, I said to myself, you know what? Sleep is more important than waiting for him to win. Yeah. I'll find out in the morning. But ultimately, we're looking at an equity market right now that is going gangbusters on this notion, maybe regulation for crypto, Kevin, but not for a lot of other industries. Pull back on regulation, lower corporate taxes. Donald Trump is seen as a pro-business president who's going to bring CEOs into the fold who are going to help him manage as well. And you've got a Dow, Taylor, to your dismay, and I'm speaking about the Dow, that's up 1,400 points right now.
Yeah. I think, first of all, you got to remember, you're putting a pro-business, pro-investor, pro-capitalism candidate in the White House. That's good for business. That's good for investors. So I think that they're getting long. But more importantly, is there's a vibe shift. And so not only are they getting long, they're also getting loud. And you can feel people saying, hey, wait a second, I was a little uncertain going into the election what was going to happen. Now that it's such a decisive victory, he's going to go into the White House. I need to be fully exposed to this market. We're going much higher. You're doing that at the same time that you've got the Fed cutting interest rates and M2 money supply growing. And so I think that that'll be very good for risk assets in general. Another area that people are not talking about yet, which I think plays into some of the deregulation, is Trump has run on a deregulation in the energy sector. And so one of the areas that I'm really paying attention to is the intersection of these new technologies, AI, crypto, et cetera, with these kind of more modern energy infrastructure companies. So there's a company in Canada, Hut 8, that I'm an advisor with. They're an energy infrastructure provider to the new industries. And so you get kind of deregulation on energy, but then you get these new energy consumers. And so anywhere where you can find the modern industries intersecting with these kind of more traditional businesses, I think you're going to see a huge kind of capital flow because people realize that they want some of the new riskier stuff, but they also still want the fundamentals of a business with hard assets, et cetera.
All right, so let me talk and kind of marry this together because we just got the news on Michigan, okay, and it was breaking toward Trump. We've now confirmed it's in his category. That's a big deal that Trump wins Michigan. Heart of the auto industry, heart of the union fights this year. Kevin, what does that tell you?
So the unions endorsed Harris. However, the membership voted for Trump is what happened. Because even though he doesn't want to mandate electric cars, this is good for just the industry as it stands because now they'll allow people to make choice between combustion and electric. And it won't put so much pressure for these for car companies like Ford, which is just, that stock has been dead in the water for years as a result of losing so much money on electric cars. Now they can say, wait, we'll build what people want because Trump wants competition in the market. We love that. This Hut 8 company I'm well aware of, and it's an interesting thing he brought up because Pomp is right. The challenge we have now is we need power for the Hut 8s of the world. They provide the data centers we don't have any power for, and now with Trump, we'll get the power. It's not just drill, baby, drill on oil. It's gas, baby, gas, because we can get the turbines to turn it into electricity.
I think we're getting too much agreement between these two right now.
No, he's a very bad guy. He's a very bad guy. He's a very bad guy.
Can I just say this? I think actually pulling off regulation and subsidies from the green space is going to spur innovation in that space. We'll get more of it under Trump because he's a lighter touch guy.
I do want to talk about that green space. Both of you gentlemen speak in ROI, return on investment. Elon Musk, you know, smart billionaire entrepreneur, invests what, $150 million in Pennsylvania? Up today, $15 billion in net worth because of Tesla. Right. If that isn't a great ROI, I don't know what is. How do you think, though, about Tesla, Elon Musk, EV, a future at the White House? You know, all of those things as market participants, Tesla shareholders are sort of ruminating with today.
The genius of Elon Musk is not going out saying that he's a green entrepreneur. He's not going out saying he's doing social impact. He's simply saying, I'm going to build a better product or service, and I'm going to come deliver it to you at a cheaper cost, and therefore the market adopts it. And so that's why most electric vehicles failed before. He showed up and said, I got a cool one that's affordable, that works. And so if you think about what the American people have done is they have handed a decisive victory and really a mandate to Donald Trump to go to the White House, bring inflation down, make housing more affordable, secure the border, don't engage in more wars, and make me have some sort of economic opportunity that I don't feel like I have right now. Now, the reason why that's really important is because people like Elon Musk provide those services. It's a deflationary type technology. It's going to help bring down costs. It's going to put this in the hands of people. And so artificial intelligence being another area that people are saying, hey, is this real? Is this not real? There's money going into the stocks. But what about for me individually? If all of a sudden artificial intelligence does fulfill the promise, which I think it will unlock a lot of time for the average person, both productivity at work, but also in their personal lives. And so when that occurs, now you have people who have time, they have tools, and you have the economy in a place where it's stronger. That is going to be a massive production gain for America. And I think that we're on the precipice of this economic explosion under a Trump presidency.
Before, Anthony, you mentioned energy, and I think it's really important to think about how the voters spoke yesterday. They spoke out on behalf of their interests. Kevin, 70% of those in our voter analysis said economy was their #1 issue. Input costs are impacted by oil prices. In Pennsylvania, where we saw the massive swing that basically, pushed Donald Trump forward. Ultimately, people spoke on the issue of fracking. I was there yesterday. It matters to them. It's a huge part of their economy. So you're not seeing a huge move in the oil price today, but he's massively going to open things up and get it going.
We're on the cusp of an energy crisis in America, specifically on electricity. If you go to any power authority, I don't care if it's West Virginia or North Dakota, South Dakota, and ask them for 100 megawatts of just power, they can't give it to you. So what Trump is doing here is going to be lowering the input costs for all 11 sectors of the economy by getting the power down. Not just, oil or gasoline, it's also electricity we need. And so when I look at opportunity for investors, and one of the reasons I'm getting on an aircraft tonight and flying to Riyadh and Abu Dhabi and Geneva, we now have a pro-power sector. And so we have to build power generation. That's billions of dollars, and I'm the man to do that. I'm hot to trot. I'm getting on the plane.
Hot to trot.
All right.
I like it.
A last one for you guys. Let's see if you disagree or not on this one. Trump in, I think that might mean Lena Khan at the FTC is out. Should she be out, Anthony?
I think that entrepreneurism in America is the driving force. We have seen entrepreneurs build this country forever, and the less that the government is involved in having their hand in that, the better. And so, yes, there are people who are concerned about monopolies, et cetera. But the fact that you can't point to a single business in America that doesn't have competition. And so whenever you see that, you can say you may not like how much competition they have, but there is still competition. And we can sit and we can complain about all kinds of different products, services, companies, et cetera. But America was built on competition. Stop complaining and start competing. And I think that's really where we've got to get our
You with them on that one?
Regarding her specifically, I say innovation, not regulation. And so I'd like to thank her for her service and get her a new exciting job somewhere else.
Okay, I think we can end on that one. I like that.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Kudlow. I'm Larry Kudlow. So, voters are smart. They decided enough was enough and then let Donald Trump to a landslide victory of historic proportions, a miracle of American democracy. We've got Joe Concha and Mark Simone and Tammy Bruce on all that in just a few moments. And markets are giving Trump a 1,500-point vote of confidence. Wow. We also have Senator Rick Scott, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik waiting in the wings. And just moments away, Kamala Harris is about to give her white flag of surrender speech at Howard University, which she should have done last night. But then again, we'll take you to it when it finally happens. We will run the whole speech. All right. Donald Trump riding a populist revolt to a new golden age. And that's the subject of the riff. Donald Trump won a landslide victory yesterday. He swept all the swing states. He broke down the so-called blue wall of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. He had good coattails, bringing 5 new Republican senators in. The House going to remain in Republican hands. Mr. Trump won the popular vote 51-47. Roughly a margin of 5 million votes. It was an historic victory, somewhat similar to Ronald Reagan back in 1980. Indeed, Mr. Trump has given us the greatest political comeback in American history. You may recall earlier this week, I made the case that the pollsters did not understand the populist surprise that was coming on Election Day. And sure enough, virtually none of them did. Here's what they missed. Mr. Trump has put together an expanded populist working folks and middle American coalition. That includes young, Latinos, blacks, whites, Asians, women, all right? Trump 4 points better with women, and unions. He founded this coalition back in 2015, 2016, and it has ebbed and flowed over the years. But the key point in this election is that he expanded the coalition. He wasn't just speaking to the base, he was expanding the base. Young voters had a 19-point shift to Trump, black men 12 points, Hispanic men 16 points, no college degrees 8 points, incomes under $50,000 10 points, Catholics 8 points higher. Most pollsters never understood the new Trump coalition in the first place, and they surely didn't understand how much he was expanding it. Now, these are folks who felt left out and abandoned by the big shots in New York and Washington, D.C. and California. 3/4 of the voters said Biden-Harris was piloting the country in the wrong direction. These folks are fed up with high prices, falling real wages, an affordability crisis, open borders, crime, the woke culture, transgenderism and DEI and extremist climate policies and seemingly endless wars in Europe and the Middle East. This was the heart of the Trump populist coalition. Democrats were in complete denial. They never understood it. They never listened to these folks. Instead, they called them names, deplorables, garbage, racist, sexist. They called Trump a fascist, a Nazi, a threat to democracy. But nobody took the Kamala Democrats seriously. Trump's populist coalition rejected big government socialism and the left-wing wokeism. Democratic pollster Mark Penn was one of the few who seemed to understand Trump's worker coalition. Republican pollster Tony Fabrizio surely understood it, as did campaign managers Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita. This was their strategy: expand the populist base, especially young people and minorities. This is what Mr. Trump was doing at all those rallies, in the garbage truck, adding salt to the fries at McDonald's, speaking to Catholic and other religious groups at the Al Smith dinner in New York, going to barbershops, rallies in the Bronx, bodegas in Harlem, the Madison Square Garden rally. And it worked. It was a smashing political and electoral victory. And last night, in his victory speech, he told supporters that success would unify the country. He said, promises made, promises kept. He intends to heal the country. He told them, God spared my life to save the country and restore America to greatness. He speaks of a golden age for America. The voters have given Mr. Trump an enormous mandate for change, and I believe he will use it to restore normalcy, peace, and prosperity. That's his ticket to greatness. And that's the riff.
Welcome back. Donald Trump elected 47th president of the United States. Trump winning the key battleground states of North Carolina, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. Meanwhile, Michigan, Nevada, and Arizona are still too close to call this morning. Trump also won the popular vote, something a Republican has not done in 20 years. Joining us right now is New York Times bestselling author, KA Consulting president, Fox News contributor, pollster, and former senior counselor to President Trump, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, great to see you.
Great to see you. I know we're all dancing.
I want to get your reaction to these results, but let me start off with the idea of it is time to heal the nation. Can Trump bring us together and heal the nation after all of the division that we've all witnessed and experienced?
Yes, Maria, I know he can. I was standing next to him in 2016 when he rewrote that section of the speech and said to America then, I'm going to be the president for all Americans, not just including those of you who didn't vote for me. He said, and there's more than a few of you. You know, he chuckled, he ad-libbed. Joe Biden had the word unity, 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 unify in his inaugural address. We never saw it. In fact, he delivered the most divisive vice president in modern times, who then became the nominee. And I think President Trump, who now has no election ahead of him ever again, he's going to work with a certain energy and alacrity, swiftness, to undo a lot of this negative stuff, these pauses of LNG permits, this war on fossil fuels, this energy dependence, these foreign wars, obviously the border, he can act pretty swiftly in the economy and so on. So how many people in life get a second chance this huge? Very few of us, if any. And so he's going to take that and use that as a springboard for policy. Unify, yes, but Maria, I would ask that question of the other side.
Right.
Because in the end, Kamala Harris was just another never-Trumper. There was no policy, there was no boldness, there was no new golden age of optimism and innovation and job creation. She just was another I'm not Trump.
Right.
And people have had enough of that. Tell us who you are. I'm not Biden, I'm not Trump. She left open that essential question. Who are you?
Which is why we want to see what Kamala Harris has to say today.
She should have said it last night, though.
Yeah,
what a ridiculous split screen.
Why not concede? I mean, it was such a huge landslide. Why not concede? Real quick, Russia is floating the idea of a reset with the United States. I find this incredible. Right after Trump wins in a landslide, Russia comes out and says, we want to reset with the United States. Trump said during the campaign that he felt he could end the war in Ukraine before he gets in office.
That's right. In 2016, we were careful to say, oh, there's only one president at one time. We told Shinzo Abe, don't fly here. He was on one of his planes to come from Japan. I don't think President Trump feels that way as much anymore since we have commanders, an absent commander-in-chief, an absent vice president. But seriously speaking, he wants to end these wars. He wants to bring peace in Israel. He wants to bring peace. He wants Iran on the run again. They were starving to do deals. And he can do that. I'm not surprised to hear Russia say that. I think you're going to hear other world leaders at least bending to and softening a little bit about, because they're seeing it in Europe. They're seeing it around the globe. They're saying, wow, we're really getting pushed back for this lack of policy, for these socialist tendencies. The wokeness everywhere was majorly rebuked last night. I think the two pillars last night on the ballot that we don't talk enough about were weakness and wokeness. We want strength over weakness, and we want fairness, Maria, over wokeness. People don't want men and women's sports. They don't want 10 million people to come here and get cell phones, cash, hotel rooms, and clothing. They don't want to think that these kids are stuck in schools based on their zip code. It's not fair. And they don't want plumbers and welders to pay for the student loans of doctors and lawyers. They say it's just not fair.
Yeah.
Right. Agreed.
So one of the questions you see what a lot of people don't see, right? There's so many pollsters, there's so many people out there who just didn't see this coming at all. And in the last days, the momentum was going to Harris. How is it that you can see it so clearly? Like, you just...
Well, I appreciate that. I did write on FoxNews.com, go pull it up, October 11th, Trump would get a narrow landslide. And I think he got more than a narrow landslide, actually.
Agreed.
But I think it's this, Lee. We never deeply examine that which we deeply disdain. So many people just don't like folks who vote for Trump. They don't see them. They don't respect them. And so if that's your vantage point about more than half of the country, by the way, then you're not going to capture them in your polling. And I think there was a real rush and panic this past weekend amongst people in the media to have their polls reflect their own point of view. And like, let's overcorrect. Well, what are you overcorrecting for? They finally were getting it right and accurately reflecting Trump's realignment of not just our American political discourse and groups, but the center-right movement of the country. This is a rebuke of leftist policies. What I do is I try to peek around corners and not look at people as voters and not look at them by race, gender, socioeconomic status, age, zip code. And by the way, the only reason to do that is because people don't look at themselves that way. I think election 2024 at the presidential level was the moment that Americans said, stop telling me I must feel this way, I must wear that, eat that, think this way, and vote this way, based on my age, gender.
What Kamala Harris did at the end of the campaign, saying that Trump is more unhinged than ever before. And I'm thinking, wait, no.
That's not going to pay your bills.
I think women were the sleeper group here.
They were. And women, again, even if they care about abortion, pro-life, or pro-choice, that was clearly an advantage for Harris overall, vote motivator, turnout intensifier. But both Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump said they were voting no on that Florida initiative. It's the first one to go down in our third most populous state. But women, Maria, want to be talked to from the waist up also. We have eyes, ears, brains, mouths, and right here, and that we want to be talked to about the economy, about the border, about crime, about security, affordability, fairness, and even energy policy. We can take it. Women also, this whole matter that we were being shamed and screamed
That's what Obama
and
did.
silenced by both Obamas, by the way. We only hear Michelle Obama once every 4 years. I hear her voice to come out and trash Donald Trump.
Yeah, and she lectured everybody, Brian.
Right. Kellyanne, you peek around corners, so peek around the corner for me. Trump, first 100 days, he's got a lot to do to consolidate the win. What do you think he starts with here?
He starts with many executive orders that have already been prepared. So they'll get another look-see. The lawyers will take another view of them. But he can take some swift action on the economy, on the border, on energy, and some other matters. Then he's going to call up the new Senate Majority Leader, whoever that is. We have a good idea. And Speaker Johnson, who will have a very thin margin, it looks like, in the House, and say, what can we do legislatively? Here's the question. Find a Democrat or four that will work with him across the aisle and say, I didn't vote for the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, but it benefited my state or my district. I'm here for this.
We got to jump. Who's going to be the head of the Senate?
Probably John Thune, but Steve Daines may throw his hat in the ring last minute, given the great success in the Senate last night.
Breitbart's John Carney here, and we have the great Charlie Gasparino, Fox Business senior correspondent and author of the terrific book, Go Woke, Go Broke. I went to his WABC radio party. You were terrific that night, by the way. You're really interesting, really terrific. Pardon me, John, we have a Fed meeting tomorrow in the middle of this election and stuff. The world thinks they should, or they will cut their Fed funds target rate, but not by 50 like they did stupidly the last time, but by 25 basis points. I think that's the totally wrong move, and the bond market vigilantes have rebelled against the Fed's easy money. They can't force feed lower rates. The 10-year has gone up almost 100 basis points. Mortgage rates are now over 7% after the Fed. So, please.
They should absolutely not be cutting tomorrow, but they locked themselves into a position. When they did the 50 basis point cut, it would look like a retreat, an admission that it was wrong if they didn't cut. And then, and you and I have been talking about this for months, it would look so political. The cut looked political. If they waited till the day after Trump gets elected and then said, no, now we don't cut anymore, that would be a political outrage. They are going to cut tomorrow, but I think they said the signal that there aren't more cuts coming, or a lot fewer than the market had priced in. The markets realized that, by the way. The market went up a lot today, not because of Fed cuts. Remember, it used to be the market
went up because of growth. Charlie Gasparino,
Exactly.
The stock market loves tax cuts and economic growth. And by the way, gold crashed today. That's the new king dollar. Trump is for the dollar as a world's reserve currency. Stock market,
although Bitcoin,
confidence. Bitcoin soars.
That used to be
Trump's the biggest crypto guy in the country.
That used to be a inflation play. It's more of a stock market play now. It's more of a fiscal policy play.
So what do you think?
Well, I think
1,500 points, Charlie.
Here's what I mean. Listen, I love it, but far be it for me to criticize 1,500 points. Larry, you're an economist. You worked at Bear Stearns and many other places. You know bond traders. You know stock traders. They approach their jobs differently. Stock traders like the tax cuts, right? Bond traders are thinking tax cuts and tariffs and maybe inflation. Here's what a smart Trump financial transition person would do, and Howard Lutnick is that person. He would talk about how Trump is going to use tariffs not as an across-the-board sort of weapon, but as something that's a tool to manage trade fairly.
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity.
Right.
Get out there, because the bond market is signaling that we see inflation. We don't like it when you combine tax cuts, not cutting Social Security, on top of, and by the way, I'm not saying I agree with them. I'm just telling you what I know about bond traders, and on top of that, tariffs.
Just say, look, economic growth policies will reduce the budget deficit.
Absolutely.
People need to say that. That's the Laffer curve. Now, your other point, I happen to agree. Howard Lutnick could do it.
J.D. Vance should
Scott Bessent can do it.
You know,
right? He's very well known.
Something Scott actually put out there that I think is really important. He said, not to correct you, but he said gold didn't crash. The dollar weakened.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
the right way to look at this, king dollar. Remember, everybody was telling us that Trump's policies would weaken the dollar.
Right.
And that's absolutely been the wrong trade.
Counterinflation.
100%.
By the way,
supply-side tax cuts are counterinflationary.
People that hedge the dollar, right, they buy Bitcoin now. It's weird, isn't it? It's like it has become this
How about
thing.
this, Charlie? So, Trump, I tariffed heavily China because of their unfair trading practices, and they are an enemy in national security terms.
Yes.
I tariffed them, but I cut tax rates on the other side. There was no inflation in my first term. Why should there be inflation now? I'm going to have very similar policies.
He's got to say it. I think at some point you got to talk to the markets a little bit. Listen,
I agree.
Trump is elected now. He's president-elect. I think now is where you might get volatility in both the stock and the bond markets, because people are going to try to digest exactly what he's trying to do. By the way, I'm not saying this is bad. This is what markets do. They kind of figure stuff out.
This is growth.
Yeah.
By the way, some of the interest rate rise today was real rates went up, which is pro-growth. That's a growth play. And real rates could drive the real component of the bond market rate There's the inflation component, and then there's the so-called real component. There's in other words, growth component and an inflation.
Right. The tell on this,
nothing
Larry.
wrong with that.
The tell on this that this was a growth expansion in the stock market is what we had been seeing for a long time, for months, was anytime the Fed looked like it was going to get more hawkish, stocks would go down. If it looked like it was going to get less hawkish, stocks would go up. People are deciding that the Fed will be more hawkish, and stocks soared.
But they don't care because we have expansionary fiscal policy coming. And I think that's... Yes, we do.
So. No.
We do. We do. Larry, when you cut taxes, I'm not saying it's bad, but you do have... That's expansionary.
It's when you lower marginal tax rates on businesses and individuals, which is what Mr. Trump's going to do, it produces more goods.
We agree with that.
And that is counterinflation.
I agree with you.
Wait, one more point.
The bond market doesn't.
Yeah, they will.
You have to sell it to them.
I'm explaining it. Now, the other thing I want to say is the Elon Musk factor is terribly important. Why is that important? Because Elon, working with Howard Lutnick and others at the transition, are cooking up a $2 trillion spending reduction plan.
Great.
They're also cooking up ways to use federal assets that will bring in, like sale leaseback ideas that will bring in royalty fees, which will bring in revenues to lower the deficit. In other words, I'm saying lower tax rates will be accompanied by huge spending cuts. This is a different policy mix.
Although Larry, the discretionary spending is limited when you take out Social Security and defense and things like that.
But if you take out,
I mean, listen, get rid of the health, get rid of the education department. I would love that.
Well,
right?
Hold on, right?
I'm there.
Hang on, it's coming. There's a lot of stuff coming here, and discretionary part. Look, take the misnamed Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, John. First of all, it's a waste of money. It's all Green New Deal. It helps China, not the United States. It'll destroy UAW jobs, et cetera, et cetera. It's one of the reasons Trump carried all the blue states. Now, point is, a lot of that stuff has been authorized, but not spent.
That's right.
Take the unspent portion out.
You know what? And
just take it. And there's the CHIPS Act, the Infrastructure Act.
Larry, let me explain. You can take that out, and then if people worry, how are we going to make microchips? Here's how you do it. You say to the banks, we're doing bank regulator reform, and we are going to lower the capital requirements when you invest in energy, when you invest in chips. We can do this through the private sector by deregulating banks, changing the way...
Which is what he did the first time around.
And cut the tax rate.
Right. So it lowers government spending, but increases the amount the private sector is spending on this. It reprivatizes the economy. That's the recipe.
But that was...
I love that. You should be the OMB director.
That was Trump 16.
Trump won.
Right, that was Trump when you were there, and they did that. And by the way, we did not need the CHIPS Act.
That's right. It was the Intel bailout act. Intel's crashed. It was a waste of money.
But Larry, they're going to have to explain the other side of the economy. This is people.
Wall Street never. Let me say, Wall Street. Goldman Sachs, let's take their economics.
They're necessary evils.
They never understood supply-side Laffer curve economics. They just don't. They just don't. Why? Because they're very liberal, and they believe in liberal Keynesian
Larry,
policy.
look what you're up against.
And they're wrong.
I know they're wrong.
I'm going to whoop them.
That's not my point.
They're running for the hills.
Listen, you ever see that thing in Clockwork Orange where they made the guy watch all this films? And I want to take David Solomon and Larry Fink and the guy from Moody's and have their eyes peeled like this and watch Kudlow all day.
They should get rid of all their
brainwash.
They should get rid of all their economists and just send their clients the Breitbart Business Digest.
I was just going to say that. All they have to do is read the Breitbart Business Digest. All they have to do is read Charlie Gasparino in the New York Post and elsewhere, and your book is terrific. And you do a wonderful job at the ABC headquarters. John Carney, Charlie Gasparino, thanks ever so much. All right.